1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Have you ever had a situation where you were talking to someone of the opposite sex and you were at an impasse because you couldn't communicate the same way? I've had those situations in my personal relationships and my work relationships, and I've noticed the difference between men and women. Today I'm going to tell you about those differences between men and women and the ways they communicate verbally, non-verbally, and the biological and socialization influences that can play a part in those differences. Firstly, I'm going to tell you about how men and women communicate verbally, differently verbally. In storytelling, men tend to tell stories exactly how they remember them, and sometimes add in exaggerations or focus on the humorous parts to make their stories more interesting. And women in those same stories will focus more on the emotions and how those situations made them feel. So if it was a situation that made them happy, they'll focus on that, or if it made them sad, they'll focus on those feelings. When talking, females have a higher voice than males, typically. So according to Communicating with Credibility, the gender gap, females tend to remember times more when they were talking and they were cut off by a male who had a a louder and more powerful voice. When talking, women sometimes use uncertainty, even when they know that they're right. So they'll use tag questions and qualifiers such as "I think" or "right." So now that I've told you about the differences in men and women in verbal communication, I'm going to tell you about the differences in men and women in nonverbal communication. So in non-verbally eye contact, according to Kory Floyd and Communication Matters, women talking to other women will have more eye contact and hold longer gazes than a man talking to a man. When men and women are talking and interacting with each other, those eye gazes will be similar in length to women talking to other women. When it comes to personal space, women are more inviting to another woman that they might not know as well, and they'll be more inviting. But if a man comes too close, they'll see it as more of a violation of personal space, but you won't really see a man being in the space of another man that they don't know very well. When it comes to touch in nonverbal communication, men will touch women more than a woman will touch a man that they don't really know very well, but you won't really see a man touching a man that they don't know. Finally, I'm going to talk to you about nonverbal social and biological influences that have an effect on gender and their communication skills. So for nonverbal behaviors, it's more influenced by socialization. According to Gender and the Communication of Emotion via Touch, when little girls are growing up, their moms tend to talk to them more about emotions and caretaking, and they'll talk to them about several emotions, whether they're sad or happy. When little boys are growing up, the only emotions that mothers really talk to them about are when they're in trouble, so anger. When women are touched by a man that they don't really know very well, the more that they see it as sexual, the less that they'll see it as warm and friendly. But when a man is touched by a woman that they don't really know, the more they see it as sexual, the more they will see it as woman-friendly. This can be attributed to women seeing the media and all of and having the influence of fearing men. And then verbally, women have, again, the higher pitch than men do, and this biologically can be attributed to a smaller voice box and shorter vocal cords. In conclusion, I have talked to you about the differences in nonverbal communication and verbal communication, and then their influences by socialization and biological influences. So now that you know these things, you can identify your communication skills and where you may have picked them up from. Okay, do any of you have questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You talk about stereotypes between men and women. How do these different types of communication styles reflect on the inequality between men and women?
When it comes to the uncertainty of women, sometimes they'll be seen as less powerful, or they don't know as much when they use the qualifiers and tag questions that I talked about, like using I think or right, or things like that. They'll be seen as they don't know as much. And
has that changed any in the last decade or so because of the movement to try to bridge that gap between men and women?
I think it has for those supporting the feminist movement. I think because they know how they're seen and they're aware of the differences, and I think I'm more aware of the differences, so I try to change how I communicate as well. So I think because now women are becoming or are seen as more equal, then they can adjust with their communication skills.
Do you think these differences are born out of a human biology or like a nurturing attitude as they're grown up? They're taught these differences in communication styles.
I think other than the vocal box issue for how high their voice is, I think it's definitely a socialization issue and how the media portrays people and how little girls are raised and little boys are raised and the differences. So it starts with the people raising these children. Any other questions? Okay.
It was like, when you stopped talking, it was like 5:30 something.